Cabin Sports Radio.
Here comes the siren. I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Coaching will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
Oh, baby, for sure.
Cabin Sports Radio starts now.
Mike, I got a question for you right off the top, and answer honest.
Hit me.
Before last night, did you know that Kansas City was not in Kansas?
I didn't.
I don't think anyone knew.
No.
Someone.
I would have guessed Kansas.
Well, apparently there is a Kansas City in Kansas. It is directly across the border from Missouri.
Oh, wow.
Of course, Missouri being where the Kansas City Chiefs reside.
Of course.
Nevertheless, the Kansas City Chiefs made the great state of Kansas proud last night in a deleted tweet.
Yeah. They sure did.
We all learned a little geography last night. Of course, the Super Bowl went down. Kansas City Chiefs, your Super Bowl 54 champions, defeating the San Francisco 49ers. We will talk about all that and more as we move along on Cabin Sports Radio. But first, let's take a look at your Cabin Sports Radio headlines.
Yes, the aforementioned Kansas City Chiefs, not to be confused with the Missouri Chiefs, beat the San Francisco 49ers 31-20 last night to claim their second ever Super Bowl and first in 50 years. The Chiefs scored 21 points in the fourth quarter alone en route to a thrilling comeback win. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes was named Super Bowl MVP afterwards, the youngest player to ever win the award at just 24 years old.
Isn't it amazing what a difference half a quarter of football can make?
Yeah. It was only in the last 6 minutes, I think, of the fourth quarter. 20-10 for 49ers, looking pretty good, right? You got the number one defense in the entire association. And they had Mahomes, I don't want to use the word rattled, but their third down conversions were not there in the first half. 10 points, I think, was the fewest that they put up all season long in a half to start a game.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't firing on all cylinders as we were sort of accustomed to seeing even in the two previous postseason games.
Yeah.
And then it just all came unraveled.
It was interesting because one of the analysts on the panel, I can't remember which one it was, made a comment that the Kansas City Chiefs, while they were down 20-10, might have the San Francisco 49ers right where they want them.
That's right.
Now, obviously, that was, a bit in jest, but they had made huge comebacks in their previous two games to make it to the Super Bowl. So I don't think they were serious when they said that, but as it turned out, had them right where they wanted. They kind of lulled them to a false sense of security,
right?
I guess. But I mean, yeah, you're right. Like Patrick Mahomes looked awful.
Yeah.
He was throwing, easy passes into the dirt. He was throwing behind his receivers. His second interception was probably one of the worst throws I've ever seen. Like,
not a good toss.
Right. And he even joked about it after. He's like, I put it right in between the 5 and the 4.
Yeah.
of the 49ers defender. He looked brutal. And then all of a sudden, flicked a switch.
Yeah.
Things turned around. And not only do they win the Super Bowl, but Patrick Mahomes redeems himself and wins Super Bowl MVP. Interestingly enough, though, and I've thought about this quite a bit because, through 3.5 quarters, he really did not look good.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington Post had an article today arguing that the Chiefs running back Damian Williams should have been Super Bowl MVP. And I just kind of thought about this. I was like, you know what? Mahomes probably wins by default because as far as like standout numbers goes, there's probably not anyone else really that put up big numbers where you're like, oh, well,
right.
Maybe it should be this guy. Damian Williams, though, ran for 104 yards, 6.1 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
And with the MVP win, Patrick Mahomes actually became the lowest rated Super Bowl winner game MVP in recent history, and I only say recent history because I didn't have the time or patience to go
That's fair.
through the whole history
That's fair.
of the Super Bowl. And, so possibly ever, a 78.1 passer rating. Only Troy Aikman, Ben Roethlisberger, who you may or may not remember in 2006, had a 22.1 passer rating at the end of that Super Bowl, and Tom Brady in last year's Super Bowl game have had lower ratings as winning quarterbacks. However, none of those three in those years won the MVP.
Wow.
Mahomes takes it home with a pretty abysmal passer rating.
Yeah, and it's not like you said, other guys weren't really firing. Travis Kelce, maybe because Mahomes really wasn't throwing the ball that well, it didn't seem like he got going as much as we had seen in previous matchups. But able to turn it around. And you're right, even, in the first 3.5 quarters even, it wasn't until that around the 6-minute mark when, they started getting some drives together. Yeah. Which we know they're capable of doing. Think back to the, was it against the Houston Texans in the divisional round, down 21-0, 24-0 at half. Managed to get a lead going into the second half, and then go on to win that game 51-31. I think they were down like 24-14 in the conference championship against the Titans as well, able to come out on top like 35-24 in that one. But we saw, and it was weird to see, the MVP from last year not throwing the ball well, just missing guys. He might have had them in the pocket, and just the pass wasn't there. It was kind of weird to see, but able to flip a switch and
figured it out. I hate to say it, but my boy Richard Sherman got torched on that late throw to Watkins, I think it was. Down the sidelines. Ooh.
Upon first, I didn't actually think that one was in. The
ensuing.
Maybe I'm thinking of another score, and there's that.
I think that led to the play where they did like kind of a roundabout running play. And he was like, the ball had just touched the line at the same time that his toe touched that was about as close as it gets. Really.
Seriously. Yeah. But there's a nice freeze frame of him just eating some dirt. Yeah. Which, not a great look for him. No. I think there was previously a play where Tyreek Hill got him going the other way too. A little bit of an ankle breaker. Yeah. Bit of a rough game for Mr. Sherman. But some mutual respect before and after. So you hope there's no love lost there. Let's move gears to hockey. If there was ever any doubt of the Battle of Alberta not being back, well, that was squashed on Saturday with another highly entertaining game between the Oilers and Flames. Leon Draisaitl tallied 4 assists. Connor McDavid scored twice en route to an 8-3 win for Edmonton over their division rival. The two teams also combined for 102 penalty minutes, including 38 from goalies Mike Smith and Cam Talbot. We had a goalie fight, Lecter.
Surprisingly, the first in Battle of Alberta history. I could not believe that. When someone pulled that stat out, I was like, you think back about all the fiery goaltenders that the Flames and the Oilers have had in their past. Like, how did Bill Ranford and Mike Vernon not go toe-to-toe at some point?
That was a shocking statistic for me, too. Obviously, the blood was boiling, and tensions did boil over. I felt for Talbot. I did. That was a tough situation. But especially with coming into the game after Riddick was pulled early, the puck wasn't covered. I think it was it Gagne who came in and started poking. As soon as he started throwing those blockers, and then you've got, Kachuk and Bear. And then another couple guys squared off in the corner.
Giordano was right in there.
I didn't think anything of it until they panned to Mike Smith as he did the slow skate to center ice, and then rested his chin on the butt of his stick. Like, oh my goodness! Like, he's not going to cross. He's not going to cross the center ice.
Went into the old Ken Dryden pose.
And then
what are we doing here?
I don't know if you saw the picture afterwards of Darnell Nurse pointing.
I didn't know.
He looked right at Talbot and started pointing at center ice. Like, you got to go. You have to go now. I don't know how reluctantly he went over, and now even Cam Talbot's wife's into it on Twitter. It boiled over.
Well, he laughed about it after the game. I saw a quote from Cam Talbot. He was just like, he's a pretty tough guy. I didn't think it would go too well for me, but he stepped up. He stepped up to the red line, I guess, whatever. It's all part of the game.
Yeah, lots more to digest from the Battle of Alberta coming up.
What a just before you continue,
Yeah.
what an interesting contrast with the Leafs Sens game being
Yes.
before that. Oh, the Battle of Ontario.
That's right.
Little deflated. Battle of Alberta. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, here's the entertaining hockey.
Actually, to put that into perspective, when I was coming up with the, because I was curious myself after watching both games, pretty entertaining hockey games for different reasons.
Yeah.
When I came up with the penalty minute count, 102 combined minutes for the Flames and Oilers, I was asking myself, is that a lot? So I went back into the annals and looked at the box score for the Leafs and Senators game earlier in the broadcast. They combined for 12 minutes. So that puts things into perspective a little bit. The Battle of Alberta
tame, a little more tame.
is red hot right now. Shifting to some local hockey action, Hockey Day in Canada is coming to Yellowknife this week. The 4-day festival kicks off Wednesday and runs through Saturday with events planned throughout the city to celebrate the game of hockey. Events include hockey clinics, community visits with the Stanley Cup, the Challenge Cup, of course, an alumni and celebrity matchup, and a live broadcast from Samba K Park.
We are in the process of putting together teams for what will be undoubtedly the most epic event of all the Hockey Day in Canada events.
Oh.
The MLAs versus the media hockey team.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's going to be a bloodbath. Oh, my
Holy.
God. You wait and see. The rosters are being finalized right
Excellent.
now. It's going to go down, I think, 9 a.m. on Saturday.
Really? Oh, my goodness.
So we'll all get our coffees in us and hit the ice and just see what happens.
That sounds pretty good. The Stanley Cup will be here. We'll have some former NHLers here. We'll have some Sportsnet familiar faces. Ron McLean, of course, Tara Sloan, Ken Reed, Ivanka Osmak. There'll be some prominent folks in town, and we're going to celebrate the game we both know and love.
And, of course, Sir John, St. Pat's, the Wade Hamer Challenge Cup going down. That is always fun. So that happens Friday.
That's right.
During the events.
I will be there. Let's switch gears to tennis. Novak Djokovic needed 5 sets to beat Dominic Thiem in the Australian Open final over the weekend. Djokovic, the world's number 1 ranked player, has now won more Australian Open titles than anyone else with 8. Canada's Milos Raonic had a good run at the tournament, but was beaten by Djokovic in straight sets in a quarter-final matchup.
Yeah, we could have predicted that.
We were, we were teeing up the Australian Open quarterfinal matchup between the two. That was last Tuesday.
Yeah.
So on our last broadcast, we broke it down. Previously 0-9 against the Serbian Novak Djokovic. You quickly predicted that would shift to 0-10.
Yeah, I'm not a betting man.
No.
And but if I was to put money on it, I would feel pretty safe about that one. And well, lo and behold, I guess I should have bet on it. Now that would have been what? Like, I probably would have. You know what? I don't know how the odds work in tennis, but like you probably would have lost money just because you bet on Djokovic against Ron. It's like, come on, man.
Let's say
make this interesting.
Put down $100. You might walk away with 90. I don't know. Yeah.
102.
A big time favorite. But hey, Milos was firing on all cylinders until that matchup. I don't think he had dropped a set to that point. His opponent that he beat in the round, the round of 32 beforehand, Cilic saying he's playing really good tennis right now. He's got as good a shot as anyone. And then Djokovic dusts him in 3 sets.
Yeah.
And then, plays Dominic Thiem in the final, who ousted Rafael Nadal.
I was going to say, that's pretty exciting on its own, that Dominic Thiem is not Nadal or Federer.
Right.
So that's something new.
But Djokovic did have to go through one of them. He did have to go through Federer in what would have been, I'm assuming, the semifinal. But Nadal not coming out on the other side thanks to Thiem. Still a pretty good final, right? 5 sets. What more could you ask for? Let's wrap things up with basketball. The Toronto Raptors will go for a franchise best 12th straight win when they play the Pacers on Wednesday. The defending NBA champions beat Detroit and Chicago over the weekend to tie a team record with 11 consecutive wins. The recent streak also helped Coach Nick Nurse secure a spot in this month's NBA All-Star Game, where him and his staff will have a chance to coach Team Giannis against Team LeBron.
So Raps are sitting pretty much, I think, where you would have predicted they would have been at this point in the season.
Absolutely not. Well, I guess I'm speaking for most, American analysts who probably. I'm sure there's some that even had them outside of the playoff picture now that Kawhi's gone.
Well, yeah, the sky was falling.
That's right.
Of course. No, but you pretty much thought they would be sitting in second, maybe third if they had, a few bad runs, but they've won their last 11 in a row, like you say, going for their 12th. Or did you say they won their 12th?
No, they're going to go for it.
Right.
Go for it on Wednesday.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and I've seen a lot of talk just kind of wondering, what do you do now?
I know.
If you're the Raptors, do you just kind of go into the playoffs and see what happens? Do you try to move some future pieces for some now pieces?
Mm-hmm.
Like what do you think the Raptors' options are?
Well, obviously they've got Kyle locked in for one more year after this year. I think the big question mark at the end of this season will be the status of Fred VanVleet, who is due for a very big payday.
Right.
And then you also have the two big UFAs in Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, two integral parts of the current roster and the championship run last year. Marc Gasol has had health issues this year, and his scoring has dipped, but he's a guy you want on your team just for defensive reasons. He's one of the few guys in the league who can lock up Joel Embiid, and we saw that last year in the playoffs, and we've seen that in their first matchup this season as well. It's a bit of a mental thing for Joel Embiid at this point. So you've got those two UFA situations, and you've got the contract status of Fred VanVleet. If you're looking at movable pieces, I mean, if that is the direction that they want to go and they do want to add talent, someone like Norm Powell might be the most expendable option. But even himself, he's had a great year himself, up to, I think, averaging close to 15 points. Struggled with health, though. So he's had a shoulder injury, and now...
And just fractured his hand.
Yeah, and the timing of it was horrible. He was playing the best basketball of his career. So the timing, really unfortunate. Obviously, Marc Gasol still out of the lineup, I believe, with a hamstring issue. And that's what makes this run so crazy. They've had every single important person on their roster. Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, every single one of them has missed a significant period of time. And the fact that they're number 2 in the conference with a pretty comfortable cushion is pretty mind-blowing. I don't think anyone had them in that position, especially when you factor in all those injuries. To be fair, I think I had them more in the 4 to 5. I think I said at the beginning of the season they would be fighting for home court.
Okay.
And that was because even in the games that Kawhi missed last year, they had a really good record.
Right. Yeah.
Something like 15-4 or something like that. So I knew they would factor into the equation in the Eastern Conference, but they have even surpassed my own expectations. And now for Nick Nurse, he gets a chance to coach Team Giannis. Some people saying the recruitment process will begin. Of course, a huge 2021 free agent if he does hit the open market, which a lot of people are saying could happen. And there are already some ties between Masai Ujiri, general manager of the Toronto Raptors, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, reigning MVP for the Milwaukee Bucks. So is there something there? Who knows? But maybe the recruitment process can start a little early. So, and how cool would it be? Sorry, just to mention one lastly here. If so the format is a little different from the NHL, obviously. The 2 leading vote getters per conference, they get to be the captains. So they pick their own team.
Right.
So it is conceivable that Giannis could be on the same team as both Lowry, Siakam, even Kawhi Leonard. That'd be kind of cool. And then you got someone like Nick Nurse at the helm. It'd just be a cool story.
Speaking of Kyle Lowry, I think I saw a story last week that his All-Star selection makes him the Raptors' all-time franchise leader.
That's right.
In All-Star selection. I think they had, like, Vince Carter had 5. I think DeMar might have had 5.
Would have been right around there too. Chris Bosh, I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably
maybe around
5.
4 or something like that. Yeah. No, I mean, at this point, and now the conversation sort of shifted. Is this a Hall of Fame resume at this point, right?
Yeah.
NBA champion, Olympic gold medalist, 6-time All-Star, like you said.
Yeah.
And now I think another cool story, the Toronto Raptors, I think, are the only team that has had an All-Star starter going back to 2013 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one last thing on the Raptors. What do you think this mostly points to their success this year? Do you think that coming into the year, with Kawhi Leonard removed, do you think they just weren't given enough credit for how much depth this team actually had? Or do you think Nick Nurse is maybe the best coach
Oh, man.
in NBA history.
He is the real deal. One of few coaches, I probably count them on your hand, who won an NBA title in their first year of coaching as head coach. So certainly it speaks to the coaching staff. Obviously speaks to the managerial staff as well. Masai Ujiri is as good as they come. He will be well sought after once his deal runs out. There have already been links to the New York Knicks, who was as abysmal as they come as far as NBA franchise. Forget NBA, North American professional sports franchises go. They're just a dog's breakfast. But those links are there, of course, because he's the best in the business.
Yeah.
And everyone knows it and saw the gamble he took last year trading their franchise player in DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard.
Yep.
Only got him for 1 year, but you won a championship, and what more could he ask for? So it speaks to really the whole organization. But yeah, I think you hit it on the head when you said depth. They're a deep, deep team. And even before their championship run, they had the bench mob. But now all these guys are developing before our eyes. Fred VanVleet is going to get paid this offseason, whether it's by the Raptors or someone else. Detroit is apparently after his services. The progression of Norm Powell, but then everyone in the rotation, undrafted rookie guard, Terrence Davis. So everyone, every single roster player has contributed in some form or another. And then, you've got guys like Pascal Siakam really taking the leap and going from most improved player to all-star. Like what's next for him?
Yeah.
And then you've got the steady hand at the wheel in Kyle Lowry. So I think the pieces were always there, but even still, like I said earlier, I think they've surpassed most people's expectations.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, if only the other Toronto franchise, and I say the other as though there's only one, but there's only one other one as far as this show is concerned, pretty much.
We know who we're talking about.
Yeah, the Toronto Argos. If
Yeah.
only they could get it figured out.
Get it together.
All right, coming up on Cabin Sports Radio, the NHL trade deadline is getting closer and closer, and the trade talks are starting to heat up. We'll explore a few of those next on Cabin Sports Radio.
Cabin Sports Radio.
Cabin Sports Radio is always brought to you by Sport North. Check out sportnorth.com for everything going on with sport in the North, including Team NT Mission Staff, which has now been named for the upcoming Arctic Winter Games in Whitehorse. You can find the entire list of mission staff members for this year's games at sportnorth.com. And on that note, the Arctic Winter Games are not far away, March 15th to 21st. The official website, awg2020.org. You can keep up with everything Arctic Winter Games there or at sportnorth.com. And, of course, our own Ollie Williams will be there covering the games from start to finish. So we will have updates from him as the games go on. And go Team NT, go. All right. So we mentioned the Battle of Alberta a little bit off the top of the show. The third installment in as many weeks. Not a letdown at all. My God, like what an entertaining game. Obviously, if you're a Calgary Flames fan, you would have liked to have seen your team fare a little better score-wise, but it's so great to see rivalries like this still exist. And like I said, the contrast of the Battle of Ontario, which, in the early 2000s, was about as red hot as they got. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators did not like each other. And that always came out because they were both very competitive teams. And so you always had entertaining games between the two of them. And then when it got into the playoffs, just forget about it. That was some of the most entertaining hockey you could have ever watched. The Battle of Alberta has taken that over.
Yeah.
Forget about the Battle of Ontario. The Battle of Alberta is where it's at. And we saw another installment of that this past Saturday night. What was it, 102 minutes in penalties?
Yep, 102.
Oh, my God. And I don't think Zach Kassian even factored into that.
Amazingly, two people with absolutely no penalty minutes in that game, both Milan Lucic and Zach Kassian combined for a goose egg in the PIM department, which is absolutely shocking. You mentioned the Battle of Ontario. I feel like there was a period of time they'd always link up in the playoffs, always in the first round.
Yep.
And the Leafs would always win in 7.
Yeah,
it would go to 7, but they would come out on top. There was another period in time when Danny Heatley was the premier goal scorer he was, where they just dusted him. There were some 8-0 finals. There were some 8-2 finals. It was a really good stretch in the Battle of Ontario for Ottawa.
Yeah.
But my goodness, if you want skilled hockey. And that's what's so awesome about the Battle of Alberta right now. Both teams firmly entrenched in the fight for the Pacific Division crown.
Yeah.
Edmonton, 3 points behind Vancouver for first with a game at hand, and Calgary only 2 points behind Edmonton. So you got the three Canadian clubs right at the top there. I think we're only going to have one more installment in the Battle of Alberta on the last game, actually. Could you imagine if there was playoff implications on the line?
Ooh.
It'd be great, but say Vancouver does run away or another team, Vegas starts to get hot. It's amazing also that the three California teams are the ones sitting at the bottom. For so long now, we're accustomed to seeing good Ducks teams, good Kings teams, good Sharks teams.
Yeah.
Not the case this year. But can you imagine if some team other than the Flames or the Oilers run away with the Pacific and we're set up for a first-round matchup? Oh, my goodness.
And isn't it amazing considering what we thought the standings would look like at this point in the NHL at the start of the season? Isn't it amazing to say that the Vancouver Canucks are tops in the Pacific Division?
Yeah.
That is, again, I'm not a huge Canucks fan. I do enjoy watching them play now. But it's so cool to see such a young team do what they're doing, despite the fact that there was no expectations from the Vancouver Canucks this year. Basically, if they were competitive for a playoff spot, their fan base would have been happy.
Yeah, it's a great story. And they've got the pieces there with Peterson, Horvat, Besser. But then you throw someone in like JT Miller, that really kind of quiet off-season acquisition.
Yeah.
He's been a point-a-game player for them. It's been a great story. I think he was one of the NHL's 3 stars of the week. Leon Draisaitl, number 1. Stamkos, I think, number 2. Number 3, JT Miller.
Yeah.
And it's just a great story. 7 wins in their last 10, plus 16. At this point in the season, 53 games in, 29 left. That's not a fluke. And they are seriously in the mix to win the Pacific Division, at the very least, make their first playoff appearance in a couple of years. So a really, really good story on the West Coast.
I think the amazing thing, too, is it seems like they've done it so quietly.
Yeah.
Like they've just kind of gone about their business. You'd think with a team like that, where there's no expectations, Arizona has kind of plummeted recently. I think they've lost like their last 5 in a row or something.
Yeah, they're
like
dropping
that.
off.
So they've kind of fallen a bit out of the playoff picture in the Pacific there. But there was when they were at the top, like, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, they were sitting at the top of the Pacific Division, and that seemed like that was crazy. Like no one expected that. Vancouver since then has just been one of the best teams in the NHL, and it just has seemed very routine.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing, but obviously with the trade deadline, 3 weeks away, February 24th, you got to wonder what teams are thinking now. And at this point in the year, you would have thought Vancouver would have been in a bit of a selling mode,
right,
or at least, again,
stand pat.
Yeah, stand pat, like stay competitive. Hopefully you can get maybe that last wild card spot.
Mm-hmm.
But now that they're establishing that they are a legit threat in the Pacific Division, what do you do if you're the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah.
Do you just stay pat and maybe see where your youth can carry you? Or do you start to look at adding some pieces?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And in the last segment, you mentioned the Toronto Raptors, for instance, right? A team that you didn't really expect to be in the exact position they're at. And now reports that they're a team that's looking to add talent.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone at the trade deadline in some form or another is trying to retain talent, whether it's the type of talent that's going to get you over the top right now,
right,
or maybe some more raw talent that you could develop in future years and help deliver playoff pushes down the road. They're at a crossroads, right? Because no one expected them to be in the position that they are right now, and management does have some decisions to make. Obviously, you're not going to want to part with any future assets, but if there is someone, I don't even know what they would be in the market for. Goaltending been pretty solid. Like Jacob Markstrom has put together a good year. 917 save percentage, 20-13-3, 270 goals against average. That's not an issue. We talked about the offseason acquisition of JT Miller, so I don't even know where there's a hole right now when you've got a slight cushion in the division, but when no one expected you there in the first place. they're in a pretty good position right now. It'll be interesting. There's still obviously 3 weeks to go, I think, to the day until the deadline. So there could be some shuffling in that time. But yeah, you've got to imagine that management has had that conversation already. What are we doing?
And I feel like it's kind of strange because it's weird how that dictates where the trajectory of the rest of your season is going to go. Because if they were where we expected them to be, which is battling for a wild card spot, you would have thought that you just let the youth. You let them figure it out.
Yep.
You let them experience what this is like, and they're all going to grow and they're all going to become better players because of it. So you don't want to bring in someone to potentially take away some ice time from a young player who's figuring out what this whole battle thing is about in the NHL.
Yeah.
I don't know why that should necessarily change if you're in first place in the Pacific. I mean, your young, unexpected talent has got you to this point. Why take the risk of perhaps ruining any of that chemistry?
Yeah.
If I'm Vancouver Canucks management, I'm thinking maybe you just leave it.
Yeah.
You just leave it be and see where this team can carry. You've clearly put together a good enough team to be competitive, let alone surprise you and be first in the Pacific Division. Why not just let it ride?
Yeah, I don't think you need to tinker, and especially not. We're not looking for any blockbuster moves here. This is a team I think that can stand pat. I think that the Pacific was pretty open at the start of the year.
Yeah,
and I think it will be close throughout. But even looking over at the Central, no one's really running away outside of St. Louis.
Yeah.
Colorado has tapered off of late. Dallas has sort of always been there. I'm sorry, but your Jets, they're slipping a little bit.
Yeah, they really are.
So it's not like you've got an absolute juggernaut outside of maybe the St. Louis Blues in the Central Division. When you look at the grand scheme of things and the whole picture of the Western Conference, they're right there.
Yeah.
They're number 2. So even in the scope of an entire conference, they're right in the mix. So there's really no reason for them to tinker too much. They've got a competitive club as is, and a team that's really, quite frankly, only figuring out how good they are right now because they're so young. It could be a pretty exciting spring on the West Coast.
I think one of the only sure-ish things about the Vancouver Canucks right now is that Travis Green has got to be in the Jack Adams.
Oh,
running.
absolutely.
Like, he's got to be. He's got to be the number one front runner.
I would think
now.
so.
Like that's just unbelievable what they're doing over there. Yeah, so move slightly east. We've talked about the Battle of Alberta. Obviously, the Edmonton Oilers just 3 points back of the Vancouver Canucks. Calgary Flames just 2 points behind them. All very competitive in that Pacific Division. I think both the Flames and the Oilers are probably looking to add something.
Yeah.
What that something is, I don't really know. I know there's been a lot of rumors about the Calgary Flames possibly talking to the LA Kings about Tyler Toffoli.
Okay.
I don't know what a return package necessarily looks like. I would assume probably like a second-round draft pick and maybe a prospect, something like that. Toffoli has, we all know he's got the potential to be a 25 to 30 goal scorer. He's done it before, but I don't know if he's the kind of guy that you really want to. I don't think you want to move an important piece to bring in a Tyler Toffoli because the Flames. Obviously, they were disappointed last year with their playoff showing, but at the very least, you got to think they learned a lot from that. They're not a whole lot different, roster makeup wise. One change in goal when they flipped Cam Talbot for Mike Smith.
Yeah,
they got a little bit bigger with the Milan Lucic James Neal trade.
Right.
Other than that, pretty much the same deal going in.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's much you can really do for the Calgary Flames, and I feel like the Edmonton Oilers are kind of in the same situation.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot you can really do to change the makeup of this team, unless again you want to potentially trade some high draft picks to try and get some help.
Yeah, and looking at the Oilers, one game at hand at the Canucks, they win that, and now you're 1 point out of a division lead, so they're right there too. And the Flames right on their heels. You mentioned Lucic, whose name now will be forever linked with James Neal, of course, who's on the Oilers. Quick point on both of them. Obviously, the Flames not living up to expectations last spring. They wanted to get tougher. And I guess my one comment on that is, again, going back to the 0 penalty minutes in the last version of the Battle of Alberta, kind of a non-factor, right?
Yeah.
Like if he's not that power forward that, we saw when he was playing with the Boston Bruins. Doesn't really have that scoring touch as much anymore. I don't know what he's up to on the season, but if he's not giving you the, you're not saying go out and get penalty minutes, but rough it up a little bit in a game that was very emotionally charged. That was surprising to me to see that Kassian as well, but specifically Milan Lucic not getting as engaged in that kind of stuff, which you would have thought he was brought in for.
I think he was maybe just trying to get inside their heads, kind of like the situation where you got a guy is a threat and he just hasn't done anything yet.
Maybe.
He's going to do something.
Right.
Maybe we just got to keep an eye on him. Oh, no, and suddenly you're distracted and the other team scores on you.
Yeah.
To follow up, Milan Lucic currently has 4 goals and 7 assists.
Thank you.
11 points in 51 games.
And he's got to be one shy of 20, I think. I feel like he's sitting at 19. As you furiously look for it. But switching gears over to James Neal now, who is missing some time, what that has allowed for the Oilers is for Yamamoto to slide back in. A small guy, but he's really added a nice punch. So now they have a little bit more of that secondary scoring, which they were long lacking. And in this last stretch, I think they're 7-1-2 in their last 10 games, so playing really good hockey after a stretch where they weren't so good. Obviously, Leon Draisaitl playing unreal hockey right now. He's up to 82, 83 points on the season. He might win the Art Ross.
And I realized the other day I was watching, I can't remember if it was the game before the last Oilers-Flames game, but I was watching Leon Draisaitl in particular, and I was like, I feel like I've never given this guy enough credit.
Maybe not quite appreciate him as much.
Really, really, really good hockey player. And not to state the obvious, because I feel like there is a sense mostly from non-Edmonton Oilers fans who aren't watching this team game in and game out. There's a sense from outside of that bubble that he's along the Connor McDavid ride.
Right.
He's on the train. He's benefiting from playing with the best player in the world.
Right.
And for sure, there's some legitimacy to that. But you watch Leon Draisaitl on his own, he is such an impressive player.
Yeah.
He sees the ice almost as well as Connor McDavid does. He obviously doesn't have that McDavid-like foot speed, because nobody does. And at the very least, if they do have McDavid-like foot speed, they can't do everything at top speed like Connor McDavid does with the puck on his stick. But Draisaitl ain't that far behind.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily someone who is incredible to watch, but he just rarely makes the wrong play.
Right.
It's amazing. And I just had this realization last week that I was just like, I haven't given this guy the credit he deserves.
I was going to throw something out there about Matthew Barzal, who, of course, now is the fastest skater.
Oh, yeah.
According to the
There you
fastest
go,
skating competition. But you're right. The things that Connor McDavid can do at top speed are pretty incredible. But to your point about, sort of riding the coattails, that you can throw that out the window now, because they're separated. Right now they're sort of 1A, 1B. Everyone loves when Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid play together. And obviously they're still going to get power play minutes together. But now you can roll out 1A, 1B. And in this, 11-game stretch where they're playing really good hockey, you're getting performances now from Nuge, who I think has more points than McDavid in that stretch.
Oh, wow.
And same with Yamamoto's a little bit behind. But between the four of them, and especially Draisaitl, getting really, really good production from your two top lines. And when you can have a 1B punch like that down the middle, that's winning hockey.
Absolutely.
And you're going to factor into the spring. So pretty good story. And like I said, they get the next win. They're suddenly 1 point out of the tops position in the Pacific as well. So looking pretty good.
Absolutely. So moving a little further east, you mentioned the Winnipeg Jets. Things are starting to look very, very grim for the Winnipeg Jets. Just came through an awful stretch of hockey before the All-Star game. Won their last game against St. Louis, which is a big win if they want to get back into the argument as far as being a potential playoff team in a, once again, pretty tough Central Division.
Yeah.
But right now, tied for fourth with Chicago. If the playoffs were to start today, they would find themselves on the outside looking in. And the really kind of tough thing for the Jets is if they do decide, today or tomorrow or next week, depending on how their next few games shake down, if they do decide without question that they are a seller and they're not a buyer, first of all, that's tough for a franchise that is, just less than 2 years removed from going to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
Obviously, last year didn't go so well. I mean, they got knocked out of the playoffs by the eventual Stanley Cup winners,
right?
So you could at least point to that. But that's a pretty steep fall from grace if they are to not only not make the playoffs this year, but 2.5 weeks ahead of the trade deadline, decide, you know what, it's just not going to happen for us. And it's starting to look that way. But they don't have a lot to move as far as if you want to sell the farm and add some draft picks and stuff. I was looking down their roster on Cap Friendly, and they really only have a couple names that stand out as pending unrestricted free agents. Lukas Spiza and Dmitry Kulikov, both who are guys who are, they don't really factor into the long-term picture with the Winnipeg Jets. Spiza was picked up, and he's been good for the Jets for the most of this season, basically to fill desperately needed gaps on defense.
Yeah.
Kulikov, he's been with them for the last few years, but is a part, a spare part, basically. He's not a guy that you ideally would like to have in your top six, but he can get the job done. But between those two guys, you're not going to really get a whole lot. I think the most you could reasonably expect back from Lukas Spiza is a third-round draft pick, something like that. So it's kind of a grim situation for the Jets that it's not looking good. It's not looking like you're going to be one of those teams as we move down the stretch here that's going to find themselves in a playoff position. And even if you decide to cut your losses now, there's not a lot to be gained from it.
Yeah. Two quick notes on the Central Division. I'll start with the Jets. They might actually get some closure on the Byfuglien front.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw it today, but they're working towards a mutual termination of his contract, which would give them some flexibility, I think just shy of $8 million.
Yeah.
So that could indicate, what sort of direction they're going as we approach the trade deadline 3 weeks away now. I don't know what. I don't think he's been skating. I have no idea what his conditioning.
Apparently he's not skating at the moment.
And this was obviously the huge question mark coming into the season.
Yeah.
But if he were to commit to another team, he would have to do so pretty quickly. I think he'd have to clear waivers too, and then he's got until close to the end of the month to commit to another team, sign a contract for him to be eligible for the playoffs. So there might be some closure on that front in the coming days here, and which could determine how they'll approach the trade deadline. Another quick note just about the Central. Chicago, 7-3 in their last 10. They're making things a little bit interesting. So that might be a team to watch as we approach the last third of the season.
Yeah, with the Dustin Byfuglien situation, it's so tough because, he's a guy that, up until this year was so beloved in that franchise. And we heard so many differing, kind of odd stories about his situation at the start of the season. And then as we progressed into the early part of the season, that story started to change a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it kind of became this ugly situation where he claimed that he was not he was not assessed properly by the Jets medical staff in their exit interviews last year. And that caused some of the problems this year. The Jets didn't want to pay for his rehab because he had stuff done elsewhere, away from the team. He had been, it just turned into this whole mess of a situation. And it's the kind of thing where now, I don't know if he hasn't been skating all year, he's presumably in not game shape.
No.
I'm assuming he's kept himself in somewhat decent shape because this isn't Dustin Byfuglien from, 7-8 years ago, but he's not in game shape.
Yeah.
And if you got a guy like that who, walks around at 270 pounds, that's even tougher to turn around and get into game shape, especially when the games are only getting quicker and more intense, and everyone's played half a season worth of hockey already. Like, you remember William Nylander, of course, with the Leafs last year, signed late, and even a little guy like that couldn't get up to speed.
Never got in a rhythm.
No,
for the whole year. Exactly.
So you try and expedite that process with someone like Dustin Byfuglien. That becomes even tougher.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and you know, even if they do have an amicable parting as far as his contract this year goes, I don't know how you I don't know how you bring him back. After that,
no,
you know?
And I don't see him suiting up for another team this year. I just, conditioning wise, and this late in the year, like you said, the hockey's only going to get tougher from here on out.
Yeah,
it's hard to see at this point him suiting up at all.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate that his story with the Winnipeg Jets may end on him just being a big distraction.
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking, to be honest. Yeah,
it is.
From a Jets fan perspective, you know, that's a really cruddy way to end, you know, an otherwise really good run with the team. Well, let's get off the Jets because that's apparently a very depressing topic.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
The Toronto Maple Leafs, not to make things more depressing. Yeah. No, the Toronto Maple Leafs they've played pretty well recently. They've tightened up defensively. They still have, and they're pretty much still in the same situation that they've been all year. The instability on the back end on defense. You know, you don't have Morgan Riley right now. I don't know if they have a definite timeline for his return, but I would assume he'll be back, I don't know, within like the next few weeks or so. Obviously, a godsend getting Jake Muzzin back.
Yeah. But Dermott back tonight too. He had missed some time, but back in the lineup tonight.
But still, this is a team that knows what they need to add, and that's a top 4 defenseman if they're going to be competitive in the playoffs. And then there's still the question mark that's been there all year, which is backup goaltending.
Yeah.
Can Michael Hutchinson be leaned on? And he has been good recently.
Yeah.
But that question mark still seems to loom. Kasperi Kapanen was a healthy scratch this past weekend, and he's already, for the last God knows how long, been linked to every Toronto Maple Leafs trade rumor.
Yep.
I assume that will only intensify now. I saw a rumor about last week about possible talks with the Montreal Canadiens. There was a Max Domi and Jeff Petrie for Kasperi Kapanen and Cody Ceci.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that would happen. If I was a Habs fan, I would be livid if that trade were to happen. And at the same time, as a Leafs fan, I don't want them to move Kasperi Kapanen.
Yeah.
I feel like he brings something. He brings potentially more as he grows and matures as a player. But he can kill penalties. He can score goals. He brings speed. You know, maybe as he gets bigger, he adds a little grit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to like about Kasperi Kapanen, but it seems like they're destined to ship him somewhere.
He might be the Leafs' fastest skater. He's a great finisher. Like you say, he kills penalties. The other name you hear thrown around all the time, Andreas Johnsson, who play on a line together, just assisted tonight on a William Nylander goal as the Leafs lead 2-1. But those are the two names that are thrown around, right? Because they're not in your top 6 per se. Obviously, you've got the guys who are untouchable. Tavares, Marner, Matthews are going absolutely nowhere.
Right.
So that's why these secondary guys like Kapanen and Johnsson will have their names thrown out there. They're also they're tradable assets in that they can bring a lot to a hockey team, and players, teams, whether you're in the mix or not, getting future pieces is really nice if you're the one giving up the more experienced talent. But a lot of times now you'll see teams asking for players that can slot into their lineup today.
Right.
So guys like Kapanen and Johnsson more of he's an energy guy, right? But he's got good hands too. He's played a lot of his career alongside Austin Matthews. They've always had a natural sort of chemistry together, and can play sort of that Zach Hyman physical hockey a lot more.
They're both on fairly friendly contracts too. I think $3.5 million they're both making. So
both signed this past off season. So some term there to those deals. And they are cap friendly deals. Both right around $4 million. So definitely tradable assets
Yeah.
if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. And on the goaltending front, we were talking about it off air. Frederik Andersen left tonight's game with an upper body injury after a collision with a Florida Panthers forward. So Hutchinson has played pretty well of late, getting a win in his last game as well. He got his first shutout not too long ago. But I feel like that's still going to sort of be the question mark. There have been some ties to Georgiev, the backup goaltender in New York.
Yeah.
But again, you're going to have to part with one or both. I don't know what the asking price would be, and probably some picks as well. On the defensive end, hearing ties to the Minnesota Wild, Matt Dumba.
Yeah, Matt Dumba's name, yep, for sure.
That could be another option.
Josh Manson's name out of Anaheim has come up a bit too.
But of course, and I don't know if you listened to Kapanen today. He slept in,
Yeah.
so he missed the practice or was late arriving to it anyways. So that, of course, is going to fuel all the speculation in the world. I was wondering myself. I thought it very fishy seeing him in the press box on Saturday night in the Battle of Ontario.
Yeah.
For what they dubbed what was it, internal accountability.
Yes.
And I remember my girlfriend asking, what the heck does that mean? And I said, I have absolutely no idea, but it's something not good.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out on Monday.
Yeah, it's not a he was sick.
Yeah.
It's something else.
He was partying or he showed up in a state he shouldn't have been in. Your mind kind of goes there.
Yeah.
He's pretty blunt. I slept in.
Yeah. I was talking with Jay Bear before the show, and he made a good point. Like obviously you don't like your young players to be making mistakes like this because there's really no excuse for sleeping in and missing practice. But it is nice to see that Sheldon Keefe is not a pushover.
Yeah, totally.
He will not be, just brushed aside. Hey, coach, sorry. There's a long lineup for coffee this morning, so I'll just put on my stuff and be in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
No, he made a veteran coach decision that you got to sit a young guy down when he does something that is not okay.
Yeah.
And good on him for making that decision, probably knowing all of the rumors that are floating around and knowing, the Toronto media being what it is, that they were going to see that, think it peculiar that Kasperi Kapanen was not in the game, and you would be, following the game, especially if you lost.
Yeah.
That would have been even worse.
Yeah.
But following the game, either way, you knew you were going to be fending off, is he being traded? Is there talks in the works as we speak right now? Because why else, in theory, would you sit Kasperi Kapanen?
Yeah. And that's obviously, of course, where my mind went first. I think when Jim Houston said it during the broadcast, before I'd seen him in the press box, that's just naturally where your mind goes. It's that time of year. We're 3 weeks away from the trade deadline. Between him and Johnson, they are the Leafs' two most tradable assets, hands down. And there have been rumors for weeks now, and there will continue to be. They will only intensify in the weeks ahead. So good on Keefe, like you said, a skilled player, a talented player, someone who's playing well right now, to take him out of the lineup. And on the part of internal accountability, you have to keep guys accountable, regardless of where they slot in the lineup. And Kapanen's response was pretty good too.
Right.
Obviously respecting the decision. It was a one-time thing, you hope, and not laying the blame or anything like that. It seems to be taking it in stride and taking accountability, what you want to see when guys miss time. Yeah,
for sure. My question though is that, there's got to be a lot of pressure on Kyle Dubas to make something happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's a big trade or if you can just if you have been right this whole time with the team you have put together, they're going to make some kind of deal.
Yes.
But is it going to be enough of a deal?
Yeah.
I think Josh Manson is not what you need. I think he's a usable piece. He's a good 5-6 guy, but we've talked all year that what they need is another legit top 4 defenseman.
Yes.
Someone who allows you to very closely control the amount of ice time you give a Cody Ceci or even a Travis Dermott. As much as I think Travis Dermott is a good young defenseman and he's only going to get better, you still got to restrict his ice time a bit.
Yeah.
And which is kind of tough and confusing because it seems like the more ice time you give him, the better he plays.
Yeah.
But he's still a young guy. He's still prone to make mistakes, especially in the playoffs. So you gotta bring in someone who can take on 20 minutes a game. Now, I don't know who that guy is. It might be Matt Dumba.
Yeah.
But is the asking price for Dumba too high?
Right.
And if I'm the Minnesota Wild, I'm thinking, I'm going to be asking for quite a bit for Matt Dumba. So if that's too high, then you look at Josh Manson. Is that enough? Is that the piece you want? You look, like I said, the rumor about Jeff Petrie in Montreal. Is he really the guy that you're looking to add?
Right.
It's going to be. There's no clear-cut right answer.
No.
And they do have the luxury of having pieces they can potentially move to get the guys that they want.
Yeah.
But the question is going to be which guy is the right guy.
And one consideration has to be term too, because beyond this year, obviously we talked about it a couple weeks ago. They burned the ELC for 1 year for Rasmus Sandin, who's been getting a lot of ice time lately, but of course due to injuries to Dermott and Riley. You got Riley locked in until I believe it's 2023-24. But beyond that, what is your blue line going to look like next year? So negotiations for Muzzin aren't going to be easy. Barry, not going to be easy. There's just not enough money to go around right now. CC, of course, they signed to a new deal in the offseason after getting him from Ottawa. So maybe they look at someone with someone who's not hitting the unrestricted free agency market at the end of this year. So term will obviously be a consideration too. I do expect something. And that's probably going to be someone like Kapanen or Johnson going the other way.
Finishing off the remaining two franchises that we haven't touched on, the Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators, both in definite selling positions.
Yep.
The Habs are in an interesting one because they did, of course, acquire the services of Ilya Kovalchuk a few weeks ago. He's played well for them. It was a low-risk move. They got him on a league minimum, $700,000 off waivers. He's an unrestricted free agent last year, and they've advertised him well.
Yeah.
Who knows? They might get, I don't know what you can reasonably expect for an Ilya Kovalchuk. Maybe a second round
I was hearing
pick.
second round.
Yeah. And then they got a couple other pieces. They got Nate Thompson, who is also a pending unrestricted free agent. He's a guy that can add some grit, good. He's having actually a really good season this year. Leadership, experience. He could be an interesting part. Marco Scandella on defense. He's a pending unrestricted free agent, but I think at $4 million, it's maybe not exactly a guy that people are looking at for that price. And then Jeff Petrie, even though he's got another year left on his contract, his name has been linked to some trade rumors. And then the Ottawa Senators, who, without question, in selling mode.
Yeah.
A lot of good young players, but, obviously just not enough to get it done this year. JG Pajot, the big one that has been linked to a lot of trade rumors.
Definitely.
Some other possible pieces they can move. Mikhail Bodker, I don't know really what you're going to get or what's going to be, what people are going to offer for him. Scott Sabourin, he's, obviously he's a rookie at 27 years old, so not much you can expect for that. Tyler Ennis is an interesting one because obviously last year, Leaf fans will remember he slotted in as a depth forward.
Yeah.
And, he can add some offense. He can inject some offense where you need some secondary scoring. I don't know that there's anyone looking necessarily for a small forward who's probably going to play a fourth line role at best heading into the playoffs. But, for the right move, you could maybe get a third round pick or something for Tyler Ennis. Other than that, Craig Anderson, I think, is probably the only other big name.
Yeah.
Longtime Senators goalie, 38 years old, but he can still get the job done.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where the Toronto Maple Leafs should be looking.
Yeah. It's an option.
I just at 4.75 mil, it's a bit steep. I'm sure if they were going to talk to the Sens about making that move, they would have to get the Senators to retain some of his salary.
Right.
So I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but and Ron Hainsey.
Yeah.
You never know about Hainzer.
Well, there's a lot. You mentioned Anderson, one of several. Just looking at the blue line and in the crease, up to 5 guys hitting the unrestricted free agency market next year. Hainsey among them, Dylan DeMello, and Anderson, as you alluded to. So they're going to have to make some decisions, too, specifically as it relates to the blue line.
Mark Borowicki is actually a guy, too, that I wouldn't mind if the Leafs were sniffing around his availability.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he is, I don't know that he's necessarily a top 4 guy, but if you're looking to add some grit, you got some grit in Borowicki.
Scored a goal in the Battle of Ontario. The only goal for the Senators.
And he's one of these players that it's hard to look him in the face.
Yeah.
He's just kind of got that Goomba look to him, and it's intimidating, quite frankly. All right. We will wait and see with bated breath as 3 weeks until the trade deadline transpire before our very eyes. And we will talk to you next week on Cabin Sports Radio.